Hi, welcome to Mother Murderer Podcaster, where we celebrate the best and the most outrageous TV movies of the 80s and 90s. I'm Lewis Jordan, a writer.
Hi. Oh, hi. I'm Katie Madonna Lee, a filmmaker and a TV movie enthusiast.
Yes. And today we're covering the made for TV movie A Smoky Mountain Christmas, starring Dolly Parton, Lee Majors, Anita Morris, and John Ritter.
Yes.
Which was broadcast on ABC on April 14th, 1986. Now, A Smoky Mountain Christmas, it was co-written by Dolly Parton and William Blake, who who also wrote another one of our holiday favorites, The Midnight Hour, which
Yeah.
we covered for Halloween. Uh, and it was directed by Henry Winkler, the Fonz himself. Apparently, Henry Winkler, I didn't realize he like directed TV. He like got an Emmy nomination for doing like an after school special starring Scott Baio.
Oh,
And
Stoned.
yeah. And then he directed a couple of movies. Apparently he got this gig because he was good friends with John Ritter. But the real force behind this movie is the star Dolly Parton, who is, one of the great singers and songwriters of our time. She's done a lot of Christmas albums. She's done a lot of Christmas TV movies. She's become associated with Christmas. This wasn't her first Christmas special, but this was her first TV movie that she
Yeah.
ever made. And, it's funny. While I was doing my research, I saw, you know, we think of her as like the most beloved star in the world, but she is literally the most beloved star in the world. There's this thing called the Q score, which is the results of this survey asking people to rate like the recognizability and likability of famous people. Like Tom Hanks has an extremely high Q score,
Yeah.
and Dolly has the highest Q score of any celebrity in the world. Um, Everybody loves Dolly,
Yeah. It's
and
true.
we love Dolly.
Yes, we do.
um, and so let's see. I guess I'll go through the plot of this movie, and then we can talk a little bit about the movie. And then I found some interesting stuff about the backstory, and so I can sort of talk about that. We can look at the performances, just get into it.
Okay.
All right. So, um, A Smoky Mountain Christmas is basically a country Christmas retelling of the fairy tale Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And the plot makes so much more sense if you know that. Because going in, it doesn't really establish off the bat that this is Snow White. It establishes that it's like a fairy tale kind of thing, but it took me one viewing to be like, oh, this is Snow White. And uh, so anyway, the movie opens with a Dolly Parton esque country music superstar named Lorna Davis, who's shooting a music video in Hollywood for a very 80s pop version of her song Country Memories. And she doesn't like how slick the video is. There's lots of dry ice and gay backup dancers, choreographed by Paula Abdul.
Yeah.
And
She did like everything.
I know. And Lorna tells the director that this is too elaborate for a simple song, and she has her manager shut down the video. She needs a break from LA and from showbiz, and so she travels back home to the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee to spend Christmas in her old friend Mary Lou's cabin. And on the way to the cabin, Lorna is pulled over by the local sheriff, who is a complete asshole and has the hots for her, but she isn't interested. But this attracts the attention of Jezebel, who's an evil, jealous witch who's in love with the sheriff, and she vows to use her magic to get rid of Lorna and have the sheriff all to herself. Um, and Lorna has no idea that at that moment in LA, everybody believes that she's been kidnapped. Which, funny enough, you would think that they would follow up on that part, but you never see her manager or any of that again. No one goes after her. Um, and you
Yeah, you're
never
right. I
find out.
forgot about that.
Yeah, she never calls them to be like, "Hey, I'm alive." Um, maybe that got cut, but anyway, except for Harry, who's a paparazzo who is staking out her house when she left, and so he follows her to Tennessee and is trying to track her down. And when Lorna arrives at her friend's cabin, she discovers 7 little orphans are living there. They're squatters. Their mother died, and now they've been left to fend for themselves.
Hmm.
And the oldest of them doesn't trust Lorna, but the youngest thinks that she's an angel who's come to take care of them. And the kids don't want her to tell anyone about them because they're afraid of going to an orphanage. And Dolly doesn't want the press finding out that she's at the cabin. So they agree to keep each other's secrets. And the kids are all terrified of a mountain man named Mountain Dan, who they think wants to eat them. But then Mountain Dan saves Lorna from Jezebel's attempt on her life. And he turns out to be a big bear and a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And by now, Lorna and the children have become very close. Lorna's become like a surrogate mother to them. They want her to adopt them. And they all invite Mountain Dan over for Christmas. But Harry, the paparazzo, has tipped off the sheriff about Lorna's identity, and he comes to take the children away to the orphanage and arrests Dolly on a false charge of assaulting a police officer just because she'd rejected his advances.
Rightfully
Cops are
so.
really, yeah, cops are really evil in this movie. And then, but the oldest child, Jake, happens to be out of the house, and he and Mountain Dan and Harry all make plans to rescue Lorna and the kids. Meanwhile, Jezebel, disguised as an old woman, gives a magic apple pie to Lorna while she's in jail, which will make her sleep for years. And Lorna eats some of it and she falls asleep. And then Mountain Dan and Harry break Lorna out of jail, and Jake starts to cry over Lorna's sleeping body, and his tears fall on her and break the spell. And she wakes up. So Jezebel comes after Lorna again, but then Lorna tricks her into eating the pie herself to find out why it didn't work. And then Jezebel falls asleep. So Lorna, Dan, Harry, and Jake all bust the kids out of the orphanage, but then they're caught by the sheriff and they end up in court in front of a very sarcastic judge
Mm-hmm.
played by John Ritter. And then it turns out that before he moved to the mountains, Mountain Dan was actually a big city lawyer who was just like cosplaying as a mountain man. And he helps argue Lorna's case, and the judge decides to drop the charges. He fires the sheriff and grants Lorna temporary custody of the kids. So then Lorna and Mountain Dan kiss, and everybody gets together for a big musical number while opening presents on Christmas morning.
Yes.
So did you see Smoky Mountain Christmas when it first came out? What's your first encounter with this movie?
My first encounter with this movie was seeing ads for it in
Mm-hmm.
in that time. I remember the ads. Now,
Yeah.
when I was 6, I'd say I was not in when this came out, I was not into country. I was full into Hollywood movies. So I don't even think I watched, honestly. I wasn't like a big Christmas movie person. I was really into Christmas, but I was obsessed with toys.
Yeah, it was the presents.
It was a presents. Um So, no, I'm sorry. I don't have any like
That's okay. Um, now, how would you describe A Smoky Mountain Christmas to somebody who hasn't seen it? Because in some ways, this is like a regular sort of home and family heartwarming Christmas special, but then in some ways, it's very strange and not that at all. I really like the movie. I think it really has like a sort of Christmas spirit to it. And I think kind of what makes the movie great is kind of what we love about Dolly, that it's campy and it's charming and it's also heartfelt, with real emotion behind it, but a little bit corny. And it has this fairy tale kind of quality, kind of folklore thing, but then it has just enough kind of strangeness and weirdness under the surface to kind of keep things interesting.
I really like just how they show the culture as like, the mountain witches, which is a real thing. Mountain woman magic. Like they show it fits into the fairy tale of Snow White, but there are, mountain witches in
Yeah,
like
yeah.
water witches too, people who witches, who can find water, stuff like that. Back when you needed a water witch, I don't know if you need one now, but
Yeah, no, and Dolly has done things like this. She's got that song "These Old Bones" about like a clairvoyant woman who reads bones,
yeah.
who's like an Appalachian sort of witch. You get a sense that she grew up with that kind of stuff. And
Oh yeah, when I saw her in concert, she talked about it. She sang a whole she went this was like in 2017, I think 2016, 15, I think I saw her in Evansville, Indiana. She did a whole block of she said that she liked singing the old like country songs, like old country. When I say old country, I mean like Ireland, Scottish, like, Scots Irish folk songs.
yeah,
And that's what she meant. And she said she sang some and a lot of them were, of course, being Irish songs were tragic songs, but very beautiful. And she sang them, and they were my favorite songs she sang in the whole show. Um, Next to "I Will Always Love You" and "Nine to Five," of
yeah,
course. But yeah, she sang those songs and she sang them on the piano too, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. So the whole time I'm watching The Mountain Witch, I'm thinking of those songs and that performance where she did all these old Irish songs about tragic things that were just really beautiful and very have a very spiritual earthy quality to them. And she and
yeah,
she her voice really shines when she sings those songs too, more so than when she sings the songs that she's known for. Um
yeah. And this is part of the theme of the movie, which I'll get into. I got some sort of background on all of this, but that she's her character is frustrated with being pigeonholed into pop music, and she
yeah.
really wants to get back to her roots. And Dolly is a great pop star, but she's at her best kind of when she gets back to her roots. So yeah, I wanted to give a little spiel on some of this stuff that I found. So there was a real narrative about how this movie came about, and it starts with Rhinestone, which is the 1984 film starring Dolly and Sylvester Stallone,
Mm.
which flopped at the box office and kind of, she had a lot of momentum going from 9 to 5 to Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Those are both hits. And this one kind of stopped her uh, career as like a theatrical film leading lady. And then she started playing like supporting parts and things like that and doing TV movies. So then with Rhinestone, it actually started out having what everybody says was a great script, a very charming and witty script. Um, but then Sylvester signed on to be her leading man, and part of his contract, he wanted to sort of co-direct the film, and he insisted on rewriting it. And he turned in this awful script that no one was happy with. And the studio kept trying to bring people in to punch it up, and then he would just go and change it back to what he had it to. He was determined to get this script the way that he wanted it. And Dolly basically had all of her power taken away and just had to star in this film that was an embarrassing bomb. And it was even worse because 84 was a very hard year for Dolly. She'd been having health issues for several years. And after Rhinestone came out, Dolly had to undergo a partial hysterectomy, and that left her unable to have children. And also in the early 80s, she'd been having an affair, a sort of, romantic extramarital affair that had gone on for a little while with another person who she won't discuss publicly to this day. But the affair broke up around the same time as her operation. And all of this resulted in Dolly falling into a major depression. And, hysterectomies they can affect hormone production, and lots of women suffer from like post hysterectomy depression.
That's what happened to Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
When she posted that infamous Facebook video, they had actually taken out her ovaries and didn't tell her to. They didn't even let her know. They took out everything and didn't give her any.
Jesus.
Yeah, they just left her to herself.
Yeah, and it's sort of, if it can kind of just kickstart you right into menopause, just from like 0 to 60. So anyway, Dolly binge ate and she put on weight and she became suicidal. And one night, in fact, she tells the story about that she was one night seriously considering killing herself, when then she was interrupted by her dog jumping up on her bed. And then she took that as like a sign from God that she was supposed to live. And she kind of pulled herself out of the depression. This seemed to be going on during 1985. And then by 1986, when they shot Smoky Mountain Christmas, she'd lost the weight that she put on and she seemed more energized and everything. Now, I don't know when production started on Smoky Mountain Christmas, but Dolly came up with the story. She co-wrote the screenplay. I really think that while she was writing and filming this movie, like the pain of the hysterectomy and her depression was still very fresh. And it seems to me that this movie was her imagining a world where she could have a family, even without giving birth.
Yes.
And when you think of it in that context, it's really moving. I found this quote from Dolly from a 2014 interview with The Guardian. She says, "I would have been a great mother, I think. I would probably have given up everything else because I would have felt guilty about that if I'd have left them to work and to tour. Everything would have changed. I probably wouldn't have been a star." And, I think she grew up in this really large family. It was like 12 kids.
Yeah, one of 12.
And family is such a central theme in her songs. And I think, she'd wanted to like establish her career. But then with this hysterectomy and everything, it was like waiting to have kids. And then suddenly it's not an option anymore.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that it's a stretch to say that, that all of that kind of came out in this script. And it was sort of like Dolly's fantasy at the time to be able to like return to her roots and have a family and a career. And one thing that I noticed about this film is, Dolly was, unlike Rhinestone, where she just had all of her control taken away. She co-wrote it. She wrote all the songs. She starred in it. And also the film was made by Dolly's production company, Sand Dollar Productions. So this was 100% her movie all the way. This was her first TV movie. And basically all of her TV movies from then on would be made like this, with her production company, with her in the driver's seat. She never really let somebody kind of take control in the way that,
because that's the truth of it is, when you are a woman, especially like Dolly, you have very, big features, very feminine, and it's what Marilyn Monroe said. They want to make you into a joke. They want to make you the joke, like haha. And you see that all the time. Like you even see on TikTok, like straight guys always putting on, cis cis guys always putting on blonde wigs and being like, I'm a woman, let's make fun of women, like the whole that whole
Yeah.
thing. But you see that a lot. It's the first thing is to make somebody a woman submissive and the butt of the joke, why the man looks heroic and at any cost, that type of thing. And it's all about that control, like who's going to have control over this, because because this, if she didn't have control, it could have easily turned into uh something such as the evil cop in the movie, where he's like, you're going to do what I want, I'm going to lock you up if you don't do what I want, if you don't submit to me, I'm going to take the kids away from you. And that to me is kind of how, if you don't have the creative control over a story, how you, if you're working with the wrong people and you don't have that say written in your contract, and you don't have that say over the story, those things happen to you where you're made the joke and you're pushed aside and you're humiliated, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that also Dolly's frustrations with her career seeped into this in that way through his character, through the character of, the paparazzi. And uh it was interesting that you know that Dolly, in the beginning, she's trying to get away from being pressured into, being more pop than she wants to be. And her next solo album after Smoky Mountain Christmas, it was in 1987, called Rainbow. And it was released at the same time as her sort of short lived variety show. And they were these bids for major mainstream success. She just signed with Columbia Records, and they wanted her in her contract to do this thing where she'd alternate recording pop albums and country albums.
Mm-hmm.
And this was her first like purely pop album, and it bombed. It did not have any hits, and the TV show only lasted one season. It was not successful. But what did work for Dolly in 1987 was her album Trio with Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt. That came out then, and which was very traditional country, completely stripped down, and it was a huge hit. It sold millions of copies. It was nominated for Album of the Year.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if Dolly knew that this pop stuff wasn't going to work, that she was having trepidations about it, and that she wanted to go back to her country roots. And that one, in another way, it was like stuff that was going on in her life was coming out in this movie. um and
Yeah, and it's, you always know, like, Dolly, in many ways, she's a very intuitive person. She knows what's
yeah,
right for her. She knows. And she was right. And it's weird how that is your the direction you seek often comes out in the stories you tell, like you actually write, the music you write and the stories you tell.
yeah, yeah, because it was like, she wrote this movie, and the movie came out, and then it actually played out in real life the following year.
See,
And
this isn't the first time we've talked about this on this show.
yeah, yeah,
This is not. We talked about this with, the Gwen Chamblin,
yeah, yeah,
and then the it wasn't John Eric Hexum that, but the making of a male model with
yeah,
Jeff
yeah,
Conaway. He died in
yeah,
that, and then he died. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Well,
So
I better make a TV movie where I win $1 million.
yeah, I know. um but anyway, I don't want to give people the this is all kind of interesting stuff, but that's not really like the tone of the movie. The tone
No.
of the movie is much lighter and more fun. um I wanted to maybe go through some of the performances and just talk about the different people in the movie. I was not expecting I was like, "Where's Lee Majors?" And then I was like, "Oh my God, Lee Majors is Mountain Dan because he's
I know.
the $6 million man." And then he comes out with this beard, and I'm like, "Was Kenny Rogers supposed to play this part, and they couldn't get him or something
I think
because he's
so. I
yeah."
think
I mean, he
I was
was
looking him
good.
up. I was like, Lee Majors is in this, and I was like, where is he? He can't be the police officer.
I guess I hadn't seen much of like Lee Majors '80s stuff, so maybe that's he just like went bare in the '80s. But he was good. I mean, like you bought him as this kind of gruff but lovable mountain guy. He was
Yeah.
good. But Anita Morris,
Ooh,
um,
she was so good.
she was a big Broadway star.
Yeah.
And she was in this musical Nine, which is like the musical version of the Fellini movie Eight and a Half. And she had this big musical number called, what was it, like a Call from the Vatican or something, where um, she's like, making this phone call to her lover, the director, and he's like, "It's a phone call from the Vatican. I have to take it," to his wife. And she does this really sexy dance, and apparently it was like too sexy, and the Tonys were like, "No, we can't broadcast that. That's too sexy." um, so and she played a lot of like girlfriends and mistresses in movies.
Yeah.
But she is so amazing as
She
Jezebel.
kills it. She's terrifying. She's
Yes,
terrifying. Like,
terrifying and over the top, and like, but then there are these certain, like, I really like the scene where she walks into that bar, and then
yeah.
she uses magic to make all the glasses kind of tip diagonally and hang there, and then
Yeah.
as she leaves they all fall and break into pieces.
Yeah.
And it's just that part almost had it was like genuinely a little weird, a little creepy. It was giving me vibes of like a Stephen King TV movie almost,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, you were gonna say.
Well, no, I love it because if you've ever been to like I think it's weird, but I also feel like it fits in that tone. Like when I shot Women's Prison in West Virginia, like in the mountains, I went to a really weird bar. I'll never forget, and it was like that. So it captures it like. And I love the bartender goes, I gotta, when all the glasses broke, he goes, I gotta start using plastic. Like, that's just it happens all the time. Like, but see, that's what I'm saying is that like it's like things are so they're so used to things being the way they are. Like every community seems to be like that. So they're so used to like this woman coming in there and giving this plea, and he's used to it. He's like, oh, here she is again.
Yeah.
Like they're so used to it. That's what I like is that it has this like she's like so intense, but I've seen that even in South Bend or Mishawaka. You go to a towny bar and there's this woman who's like, you're talking to my man. And I'm like, oh my God, no, I don't like him. And she sticks
Mhm.
the evil eye on you. You know?
But and it's funny because of Jezebel's like huge hair. It's
Yeah.
almost like she's like the photo negative of Dolly.
Yes. Yes.
She's
Yes.
like the evil Dolly.
Yes.
And uh and Anita Morris is just so like campy and theatrical and just like striking poses. And it's great. It seemed like she was having a great time doing it.
Oh, yeah.
I like as a little gay boy seeing like Jezebel versus Dolly, like literally that scene where she breaks all the glasses and then her wig is whipping around in the wind. I alone in my apartment, I was like, "Oh, work,
Yeah.
work."
I saw that and I thought of Sherelle. Sherelle was a drag queen that was in my documentary that I'm still editing on the
Mhm.
seahorse, and Sherelle she loved or I think it's once that show once, and she loved The Witch, and
Mhm.
as soon as I saw like Anita Morris walk on screen, I was like Sherelle would love this. He loved
Mhm.
the witches, like he loved the big hair, like that was his look, the big hair and the like. So sweet though.
Aw. Let's see. We've got John Ritter. Um, who was sort of like a surprise. He wasn't credited, and then it shows up, and you're like, oh, it's John Ritter.
Yeah.
Um, but he was great. He was like sarcastic and sort of underplaying, which is different from sort of the vibe of everybody else. But he was, I thought it was interesting because he was almost like a stand-in for a viewer, being like, wait, what? This plot is kind of ridiculous. Whatever, okay, fine, take the kids. You
Yes.
know, he's like a sort of cynical observer who gets won over. But I thought he was good. Then got oh my god, I can never quite get his name right. Rene Auberjonois, who plays Dolly's agent, who is
Yeah.
Odo from Deep Space Nine, and he's good. Dan Hedaya as the paparazzo, who's Cher's dad from Clueless. He's
Yeah,
very
and
good.
he's very good, and he's one of those characters. What I loved about this movie is like they make peace, they have redemption. There's because
Yeah.
there's a lot of redemption in this story. Like everyone kind of gets redeemed except I think the sheriff. I don't think he gets the mean cop, the mean police
No.
officer. I don't think Anita Morris. Well, she gets her due. I don't think she gets redeemed. The
Yeah.
evil
No. She just
witch.
gets put to sleep.
Yeah. Oh,
So
spoiler alert.
yeah, but the yeah, I thought that that was interesting how the the person who is supposed to be representing the media hounding Dolly, because it's like all of these forces that are keeping Dolly from having a family, and it's like the media hounding her, like shitty men who are sexually harassing her and bossing her around and telling her what to do and being awful to her because they want to have sex with her and she won't let them,
Yep.
and jealous women, and
Yep.
these are all of the things that she has to deal with, and she just put them all in there. But the she gave redemption to the media person, that he could find a heart. Now the cops, uh it's so funny. If you look on Letterboxd, there's a lot of comments where they're like reviews where the whole review is just like, Dolly Parton just said fuck the police. Like but the I really liked the scenes, that scene where the cops come to take the kids away and arrest her. um she's really kind of fierce in that, and
Yeah.
she's you know fighting with them. She kicks the sheriff in the shins and the kids all cheer, and you really get some of that fire. It's like that scene in 9 to 5 where she's like, I'll turn you from a rooster to a hen with one shot.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really her. I don't think that it's any coincidence that those scenes where she really shows a lot of fire are the scenes where she's put up against men who are sexually harassing her.
Yep. Yep.
And
And
because
and also like with the authority thing, you think about it. If she is one of 12 and they're out in the country, how many times do you think social services would come over and try to break up families because they don't
yeah,
have
that's
because
true.
they don't have their own room, they have a curtain,
Yeah.
or they have a mattress on the floor. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Things like that. Sometimes social services needs to come and take kids out of homes, and other times I just think it's because the parents don't have a lot of money. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I don't know. But sometimes I think that there is a real fear. There's a real show of how people have to protect themselves in these circumstances. They have to look out for each other
Yeah.
and stick together. And they show that a lot. And also like, not just kind of like how authority and people who are supposed to protect kids don't do it. Like the police are using their authority to take the kids away and put them in a place where they're not going to be loved.
Yeah.
And um you know how basically everyone has guns in this, you know, like if,
Hmm.
how many scenes where I got a gun and the door opens and there's a rifle at somebody's head, you know, like
Yeah.
it happens like three.
Even the kids have guns.
They do. They do. So, um, it really shows that, why, you know, because people are like, "Why do people need guns?" I'm like, "Well, I think if you there's certain like, if you don't live because a lot of these places don't also have emergency services or trash or things like that. They have volunteer cops, they have volunteer police, like, volunteer firefighters. So if you do
Hmm.
need somebody, it's gonna take them a long time to get there. So, like,
Yeah.
those are the other I've had this conversation with people. They're like, why do these people like guns?" I'm like, "Well, it's like, have you ever been in the like tried to call the police on a mountain, like because they need a signal? Like you know, you kind of have to protect yourself when you're out there. So this is why, and it kind of goes over
Yeah.
people's heads that not everyone lives in, you know, 15-minute city or like an area like that. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. You know, and you could see a lot of her. I mean, you know, this is set where Dolly grew up, so there's a lot of her life and
yeah,
experiences there going into it.
yeah,
Now I wanted to talk about Dolly's performance in this. Um, you know, I thought that she was great in this. You know, she's playing herself. She always kind of plays herself. Um, but she was very warm and natural. I think as time uh went on, Dolly seemed a little more mannered on film, and in this there were these great moments, especially with the kids, when she was it seemed like she was improvising with them
yeah.
and just having these lovely little moments. Her interactions with the kids were so great. In fact, speaking of the kids, were there any of the kids that really stood out to you?
Yes, the oldest one.
Mm-hmm.
I think his name was Chad Sheets. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's his name. He was really good at playing like a uh very guarded, angry child that was suspicious of outsiders. And then, you know, I thought he did a good job. I also
Yeah.
think it's really sad that he passed away on Christmas Eve when he was 26.
Yeah.
He
From
passed away
cancer.
really young. Yeah, it's really sad. And of all the things, like, you know, he was in Smoky Mountain Christmas and then, yeah, very, very sad.
I know.
But I thought he did really good. Like, I believed him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and her scenes with him, her scenes with all of the kids were really good, and you just you got the sense that she really enjoyed doing those scenes with them, um, and that they enjoyed doing the scenes with her.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I think one of the things that makes Dolly, apart from her songwriting abilities and her musical abilities and all of that, one of the things that makes her a great star is her ability to be very natural and casual in the most show busy of circumstances. Um, and make you feel like she's just folks, even if she's wearing, you know, like 30 pounds of drag.
Yeah.
And so uh I think that you really felt that uh, in this, just her charm came through, and her just a feeling of kindness and goodness that you always get from Dolly. What parts about her uh, performance stood out to you?
I really loved her interaction with the little girl when when she hung the curtain.
Oh
I like
yeah,
that when she's like, "Oh, when I got to be your age, you know, I remember when I got my curtain, my own room." And she hung the curtain, and I thought that was real sweet. I loved it when she was uh writing songs, like playing songs on the chair while they were sleeping. That was my favorite. Just or when she said, you know, if we go touch Santa Claus's beard, it's good luck and stuff like that. Just her interacting with the little kids. That was sweet. That was really sweet. Like the monologue we picked out really resonates. Like it really reminds me of when I was a nanny and when, when I got to do Flabulous. So yeah,
Yeah, and also the songs in this are really good, you
so
know.
good.
And it's kind of weird because there's like what, like six songs in this or something like that. And there was never an actual soundtrack release,
Yeah.
but she
Well,
did.
they do a Smoky Mountain Christmas at Dollywood.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and she re-recorded A Smoky Mountain Christmas, and then like I Want to Spend Christmas with Santa, I think, on her latest Christmas album, A Holly Dolly Christmas. um she she put those on like the deluxe edition of that, so clearly she hadn't forgotten about them. But there's other ones on there that are really good that, could deserved a release. And it was especially great to just hear her, just there with her guitar, really
Yeah,
stripped
that
down.
that's the kind of stuff I like.
Yeah.
Is her and the guitar and those nails. I'm looking at my nails, I trim them down to play guitar. I don't know how she does it with those nails. I don't know if she what she's pressing, how if I don't know.
She
I
must
d-
have the most incredible hand strength, because just to be able to do that without because I just think of when I paint my nails and I have wet nails and I have to make sure that I'm very careful, and the way that I have to pick everything up, it's sort of like being a crab and having pinchers. And
But that's how she plays guitar.
that's how she plays guitar, and she does it wonderfully. So I don't know, she's just an incredibly talented person.
Yes.
um there was one thing that I noticed, or I was thinking about with Dolly, a sort of, I guess, because she's wonderful and she's so charming in this, but in Dolly's movies, I guess there's one kind of flaw in her acting, and I think it's the same kind of flaw that Madonna has in her acting, which is that she's not really interested in making herself vulnerable on
Yeah.
screen.
Mm.
Like she's throughout this movie, like she was sweet and she was tender and everything, but there was never any moment where we felt like Dolly might give up or she might fail. She always seemed like really strong, and which is awesome. That's great, but it sort of takes the stakes out of it. She never really like fails or messes up. She
Yeah.
never comes off as like a regular flawed human being. There's always this thing, you understand why the little girl was like, "Oh, you're like an angel," because that's how she comes off. She comes off like this angelic kind of person. And that's sort of her that's her persona in a lot of her movies, where she's just like uh shines goodness, and she's funny and she's smart, and all of that. But and I thought it was interesting because she's clearly a very emotional and vulnerable person,
Hmm.
and that comes out in her songs. But I don't think that it's that she's not able to do it. I don't think that she's interested in doing that. I don't think that she's
Yeah.
interested in playing big crying scenes.
No.
um
Yeah. I I think Madonna is really same, I think Dolly's really good at being like all those things you said, sweet, funny. Same thing with Madonna. I think that Madonna's really good. Like everything where she's the funny one, she's
mhm.
done amazing at. I think with Dolly, it's the same thing. I think there's so much like when you because Madonna and Dolly are both really strong women who had to battle similar things like sexism and people trying to control you and take the narrative from you. And I think after you do that, there is just this cement armor inside you that is like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not giving you this. I'm not.
Yeah,
It's not going to happen. Like, she's
that
not
that
coming out. Like, and I
yeah.
think it's her protective instincts, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I think that that is what has allowed her to have such a long career, in a way, is being able to access that, to keep that part of herself private and access it to write songs and to have her own private personal feelings. But then when she's out in public, she's Dolly Parton.
Yeah,
And
I think
that,
that's smart
mhm.
because it gets messy when you're telling everybody your opinions and your feelings on things. It may get you short, in the end it doesn't really work out for you to be sharing all that.
Well, her tattoos are such a metaphor for all of that, that she really has like all of these tattoos, on her
I
arms.
forgot you told
And
me this. I remember you told me this like
yeah,
10 years ago and I was like, "What?"
yeah. And that's why you'll notice after a certain point, she always wears long sleeve dresses. And a few times when there was sort of more sheer material, there's like photos where you can see the tattoos a little bit, but she has all of these tattoos, but she wanted that for herself because
Yeah.
that's for her. That's not Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
Um, and in the characters that she plays in films, um, there's never anything that could compromise the Dolly Parton image. And I remember there's interviews where she's like, I don't play people who are uh, too far away from myself. And she's never gonna like deglam for a movie because the the most important thing is the creation of Dolly Parton, is the character of
Yeah.
Dolly Parton. Because I've always noticed that about her, that that there's like a certain point emotionally that she'll go to, and then it's like, nope, I'm not going past that.
Yeah.
And
They try to
that,
do it in interviews and she's like, "No."
yeah,
When you
yeah.
watch her and they're just like, "Oh no."
And she's so good at sidestepping it. And there, like that great line where uh what is it, Barbara Walters says to her, what do you hope that people will say about you in 80 years? And she says, I hope that they'll say, oh, she looks great for her age. um and just like bam, out of nowhere. And it's
Yeah.
like she always diffuses things with a joke. She never lets things, and it's like everything is on her terms. And
Yeah.
I was listening to her talk about her depression and that dark period, and there was a certain point where the interviewer was like, oh well, what was this thing going on with the relationship? And she was like, well, that's private. And he was like, okay, fair enough. But there's, I think that she's an extremely strong person who shows her strength in who masks it with humor and charm and all of that stuff, but she's a very strong person, and she's figured out this way to make all of this stuff work for her. And it has. She's the,
Good for
the most
her.
beloved woman in the world.
Yeah.
So
Who's really like Anita Morris. She's a mountain witch. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
well, I mean, because we don't really know. I mean, there's the whole there's long standing rumors, unconfirmed, that she might actually be in a long-term relationship with Judy Ogle, who's her best friend and personal assistant. And actually, this was interesting, the part where they show photos of
I
Dolly
saw
with her
that.
friend Mary Lou, that's actually her and Judy.
Yeah, it's her and Judy. Yeah, she even says that's what the cabin. She's like, I called my friend. She has this old cabin in the woods. Yeah, yeah. I mean, God bless her for having a friend since high school.
Yeah, yeah,
Because,
exactly.
like, I was sitting there like, wow, maybe I should have gone to school in the mountains. I mean, for being in a relationship that long, good for her if she was. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
she's lucky.
I mean, I think that she's entitled to whatever privacy that she needs, like she's uh I don't understand how celebrities can be in relationships, romantic or otherwise, when they become so public, and then everybody becomes invested in your relationship, and everybody like has an idea, and there's like the real relationship and then like the public version of your relationship, and like that's so
Yeah.
whatever Dolly needs to do to like keep a connection to herself and her roots and be able to do what she does. Clearly, she's like cracked the code for herself.
Good for her. I'm still doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I even in social media, if you post that you're in a relationship online, people it becomes less yours. You know?
yeah, yeah. So it's I like that there are certain things that Dolly keeps to herself, but then those personal things come out in ways like in this movie. You
Yeah.
know, there's like she could have written a very dark album about her feelings about that difficult time, but instead
Me.
she put all of it into a kind of fairy tale about what she wished could be true. And it was a way of dealing with those feelings but turning it into a positive thing.
Yeah.
And there's something very Dolly about that.
I love
um
her.
so yeah, overall, I mean, I think that this movie, it's a great mixture of campiness and also really heartfelt Christmas spirit. Um, and it's so likable. It's so Christmassy. It feels like a perfect Christmas movie. Because even though it's she sells the sentimentality of it, and it's there with enough kind of adventure and crazy camp and evil witches and stuff like that, that you get into it. And even I think if you're feeling kind of grinchy, this movie will make you feel sentimental and Christmassy.
I love this movie. It made me happy. It made me eat it made me eat a pie though.
Yes, because you
That
were
pie
like,
looked
oh.
good. I was like, "Oh man, it's poisonous. I'd eat that pie." I'd be asleep for a very long time.
um so anyway, as you were saying, the our monologue
Yes.
that we have, so every episode we do the Mary Catherine Gallagher monologue, inspired by Molly Shannon's character from SNL, who's obsessed with TV movies and always reciting monologues from them. And so, with each TV movie that we cover, we try to find a monologue that Mary Catherine Gallagher would have recited in one of her sketches. So, there was a perfect one that you found. At the end. Now, who would you like to do it, or shall I do it?
I think you should do it.
Okay. All right. I want to give the option. I don't want to just take it for granted.
That you will be yeah. I'll be yeah, let's so I will give the intro.
Okay.
Okay. This is our Mary Catherine Gallagher monologue. Lorna, Mountain Dan, Harry, the kids, the sheriff, and the sisters who own the orphanage are all in court on Christmas morning. Presided over by Judge John Ritter. Lorna is trying to make the case for her to be granted temporary custody of the children.
Okay. I'm not going to try to do this with a Dolly accent. I'm just going to do this straight. Okay. Well, shoot, Judge. I don't know, but I am qualified, as you say. It's just that the last few days, Your Honor, that I've been out here with these little children, they've just changed my whole attitude towards life for the better. I mean, these little people have opened me up. They've taken me in. They've shown me an emptiness in my life that I didn't even know was missing, something that I'd grown away from, home and family. I don't want to be away from that anymore. Now, I don't know how we're going to work this out, legal or otherwise, but we just have to, because we have to be together. I believe that with all my heart. I truly do. Scene.
Hmm. Yay! And that is The Spirit of Christmas. And I got to tell you, a really good Christmas movie I love that Dolly did was Coat of Many Colors that came out, and it had and that is really I mean, that is truly based on her family and her everything.
Yes.
That's good. I loved it, and I love Dolly's cameo in it. That's real good. She
Yeah.
plays the town working woman, lady of the night.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
It's
she
great.
and then let me see, there's also
Unlikely
there was the
Angel.
more recent one that was Christmas on the something or other. Um Christmas on the Square. That was it. In 2020, she did
Okay.
Christmas on the Square, which was another Christmas movie. And then she also has a great Christmas special with Kenny Rogers. Um, that's not a movie, but just them doing songs and stuff like that from
Yes. That's definitely
'84.
better than the Mr. T Manuel Lewis Christmas special that was similar. Came out at
She
the
had
same time. I did. I
yes,
watched the Mr. T Emmanuel Lewis Christmas special. It's weird. I mean,
there's so many Christmas specials to dive into. There's a million ways, but it's funny because there's not really Christmas specials in that same way. They'll have like Christmas episodes of shows, but there's not really like a Christmas special where they try to do it every once in a while. Lady Gaga did one, and this
did
person or that person will do one.
Gwen Stefani
uh
did one. I remember
Gwen
that.
Stefani did one. They'll do something for Netflix or whatever, but it's not in the the 70s especially. That was like the golden era for
It was the Carpenter Christmas special.
Carpenter Christmas specials are so good.
I love
uh
her.
I know, we love Karen Carpenter. um but Dolly's Christmas specials are great, but this one in particular I think stands out above the other ones. So anyway, I'm really glad that we were able to cover this one for Christmas.
Yes.
And then
I'm gonna
why
go eat
don't
some
you
pie.
yes. And Katie, why don't you tell the people all of the places where they can find our podcast on social media?
You can
And
find us on YouTube at Mother Murder Podcaster. You can find us on X, Mother Murder Podcaster,
mhm.
Instagram, and TikTok, Mother Murder Podcaster.
Yes, and we always do a video version of our podcasts, and this time Katie is wearing a very Dolly wig with a sort of '70s
It's
Dolly
70s
curl.
Dolly.
Yeah, yeah, we.
She had a lot of this. I was like, I don't even know how. See, this is the whole thing. I was trying to look at her hair, and I was thinking, because she had that big pony and it went all the way down. I know that it has to be an extension of some. It was permed.
Oh yeah, no, she's not. It's clearly, I mean, another one of Dolly's great lines. Somebody asks, how she gets her hair like that, and she says, "Well, I don't know. I'm never around when they do my hair, because it's wigs." So, but like I was saying before, she had that, that perm curl in the '80s. Dolly and Miss Piggy had the same
Yeah.
hair in the '80s. Um, Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye. Merry Christmas. Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas and Happy
Bye.
New Year. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.